Miami winning streak continued this past weekend, and it did so with another comeback victory that included yet another Leonardo Campana goal. Hello everybody, you are listening to Miami Total Football Radio, aka
Miami
Total
Futbol
Radio, the number one podcast on all things Inter Miami, providing you with the latest news, updates, inside information, analysis, opinions, and more. You have heard the voices of all three co-hosts of this lovely podcast. Everybody is in the house and present and in attendance today. My name is Franco Panizo. I am one of those three co-hosts. The other two are Steve El Primo Brenner and Jose Cinco Armando. We are going to start with Jose. How are you, my friend? And where the heck were you last week? Because a lot of people were wondering if you were drowning yourself in tears after Miami FC suffered that 1-0 loss to Inter Miami in the U.S. Open Cup and what we might soon be calling the Jose Armando Derby.
Oh, well, that'll be nice. Well, I was working, but, I'm happy to be back. I was happy with the Miami Clásico the day of the draw. So anything that happened after that, it was a bonus for me. I think we can all agree that I was right in expecting that game. It was a beautiful atmosphere. It was just great for the South Florida football community. So I'm sure everybody enjoyed it. Inter Miami fans just a little bit more because obviously they were able to move on. But yeah, I'm happy to be back and happy that Inter Miami is winning. Well, I don't know if I'm happy, but it's great to see happy faces around Drive Pink Stadium nowadays.
So there's no truth to the rumor that you shed a tear in the press box when you saw the full-time whistle blow?
Not a tear at all. I was very happy with the level of play of Miami FC, and I think everybody agreed on that. Even Inter Miami fans, I think, did agree on that Miami FC play a very, very good game. So, but not a tear, not a tear. Just happy that we have good football in South Florida.
Oh, so it was just dust in the press box. Okay, I got you. Steve, Primo, how are you doing today? And how was your weekend? You've been updating us quite a bit on Football Manager, so I imagine you are going to drop that in. You've been doing so in the chat and in person, so I imagine you'll do so here again on the podcast.
I won't bore you with the fact that I'm 7 games into the second season of Dortmund and actually 7 unbeaten, 7 wins. It's just I'm just continuing my football education, with these fine young players who are just growing under my tutelage. So no, it's all good. I missed the game. Mrs. Primo took me away for the weekend, which was fun. But I caught up with it yesterday or the day before, I think, and I watched the whole match, just like you, channeling my inner nerd, my inner football nerd.
That's what I'm talking about. All right.
I was drawing lines on the TV and everything. And then we went down to the training ground on Wednesday afternoon, and we had some interesting chats in a very relaxed atmosphere, and we watched Romeo Beckham do some burpees, which was quite fun.
They were burpees. Now, Jose, so that we can completely move on from the Football Manager talk on this week's pod, are you out of preseason? Yes or no?
I'm out of preseason. I'm done with preseason. I had to start the whole thing all over again. New computer. Well, not a new computer, but, my laptop. I'm playing on my laptop now. So, unfortunately, Joevin Jones is the odd man out because, blame it on MLS and the rules, right? Because I signed a couple of players that maybe I should have signed later on and not during preseason, and that was trouble. Steve knows what I'm talking about. So
amateur hour right here,
yeah. I'm done with preseasons and ready to roll.
Although Jose, just quickly, I was actually laughed at by my Inter Miami official today for saying that just because I'd watched some content on YouTube and they told me about this great young player. And
let's put it out to the audience, Steve. Before you,
very quick. We don't want to bore everyone.
No, but let's put it out to the audience and hear from them. Do you think it is cheating to play Football Manager and look up on YouTube or on the internet strategies and players to sign? Do you think that's cheating? Yes or no? Steve says no.
It's the same as if you're watching a soccer program or something, they mention a young player. Oh, am I not allowed to Google his name and then sign him? Is that what you're saying?
It's not the same thing at all.
It is the same thing.
Because you're the coach in the game, so there's already a network of ways to look up at players in the game. You are now going out of the game to find out good players and good players and good people in positions of front office to buy.
It's that realistic that you can use those. You can use these tactics. If I'm watching Villarreal Liverpool right now. If I see one like a Villarreal sub and I want to try and sign him, then I'll just look him up and he'll be on the game. He may be good.
It's not the same thing though. Is Pep Guardiola able to call someone outside of the world and say, hey, by the way, you can look 10 years into the future. Can you sign? Is this player going to be worth signing? Like, it's definitely cheating, in my opinion.
Is Pep Guardiola sitting in his front room pretending to be a football manager? I mean, I don't think he is really, is he? So,
well, he actually is a football manager, so that's,
exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not cheating.
By the way, Steve was struggling with Borussia Dortmund. I think he was on the hot seat, and a couple of weeks ago, I helped him out in the parking lot of Inter Miami's training facility. I have never played I have played the game before, but not in a long, long time. And I looked at his formation. We looked at a couple of different ones. I told him which one I think he should go with. He looked at it from, one of the screens in the video game, and he was like, wow, look at all this green, because there's like lists of green boxes and red boxes of what your strengths and weaknesses are, and he had almost no red boxes, and now he's like on a good run of form. He even sent me a video yesterday of a Holland golazo. So, yeah. So my tactical expertise has clearly influenced your season for the better.
It's influenced the second season. The first season, at the end of it, I did lose 8-1 to Bayern Munich. So and then lost the league I was 20 points behind them at the end. So I wouldn't get too excited just now. But a decent start anyway. So
my tactics can only do so much. Anyway, okay. Well, we're here to talk about Inter Miami. They win yet again over the past weekend against Atlanta United. We will touch on that and dive into that, of course. We're going to talk about Leonardo Campana's continued good run of form, something that Jose said he did not expect to keep up. We will also touch on this weekend's game against the New England Revolution. We will preview that with a very good friend and an MLS analyst and commentator, David Goss. Of course, we will do the Q&A session at the very end of the show. And of course, one last thing that we will absolutely touch on is the stadium vote that may or may not happen, may or may not take place on Thursday afternoon or Thursday evening. So, guys, we have a lot to get to, and we've wasted a good few minutes talking about Football Manager, so let's not take up any more time, and let's get to it. Okay, guys, so Inter Miami comes from behind to defeat Atlanta United at Drive Pink Stadium in Fort Lauderdale, Florida on Sunday afternoon. This was the starting lineup that Inter Miami went with. Inter Miami keeps posting a 4-1-4-1 graphic. You can look at it that way, or you can look at it as a 4-3-3. I will continue to look at it as a 4-3-3, but you can look at it either way. Nick Marsman in goal, your back four from right to left. Deandre Yedlin, Damian Lowe, Ame Mabika, and Christopher McVeigh. Jean Mota was the 6, filling in for the suspended Gregory. Mo Adams came into the lineup with Robert Taylor there, just ahead of Mota, and then your front 3, again from right to left, Ariel Lassiter, Leonardo Campana, and Robbie Robinson. So only one change there with Mo Adams coming in for the suspended Gregory. Atlanta United gets on the board early. Ronaldo Cisneros in the 13th minute, but Leonardo Campana scores a heck of a goal to equalize the game. 1-1 in the 28th minute, and then Bryce Duke off of an assist from Campana in the 64th. That is enough for Inter Miami to come out on top in a game in which it did not play that well in, but they got the result at the end of the day. Steve, I'll start with you since you've watched the game more recently. Your overall analysis and takeaway.
Yeah, I mean, it was typical Inter Miami performance, wasn't it? A bit sketchy in parts, good in other parts, conceded that early goal. I mean, I don't know how many times they've gone behind in recent matches. It seems like they're constantly going behind. But then I guess on the positive, the fact that then they're able to sort of respond and win. The game got stretched very early. I know it looked really, really hot there. There were some tired bodies after about 20 or 30 minutes. But job done. Great goal by Campana, and pleased with Bryce Duke as well, because I like the look at him. He's a spiky little player, and that would do his confidence a world of good.
Jose, you were there in attendance next to me there in the press box. What did you think of the game, and what was your main analysis and takeaway?
Well, I don't think it was a good game for Inter Miami when it comes to the level of play. They were fairly dominated by most of it, but they got the two goals. They got ended up with the result, and sometimes that's the way to go, right? It doesn't really matter how until you get the 3 points, and then you go from there. You try to get better the next few days. I think that's the plan for them. I do believe, they are relying a lot on Campana right now, and rightfully so, because he's a good player for them. My takeaway would go, and I hate to do this because when you think about a takeaway, I like to go into more like a collective effort. But I think Deandre Yedlin was so good for this team over the weekend that he was really impressive to me. So that's something that caught my attention. I really liked him as a captain, and I think that I saw the same mentality in the last game against Seattle in league play, of course. I think he showed some of that leadership. He's getting comfortable, getting to know his teammates, and I think over the weekend he showed that leadership, but as well, very good wing play. So I would personally give Deandre Yedlin the player of the match award, but I understand that the assist and the goal, will tilt it towards Campana. But I want to commend Deandre Yedlin for a great performance over the weekend.
So my main analysis would be what Steve said and what you said there, in that Inter Miami did not play great soccer, not play great football. 36% possession, 7 shots, 2 on target. Atlanta had 64% possession, 20 shots, 7 on target. Nick Marsman came up with a few saves that kept Inter Miami in the game, and Atlanta also misfired quite a few of those throughout the course of the 90 minutes. But it has to be noted, at least for my analysis, from my viewpoint, that Phil Neville's change to the 5-man backline proved huge for Inter Miami, and it was a big reason why they won this game, because they came out in the first 7 to 8 to 9 minutes of the second half struggling and giving up some pretty good chances to Atlanta United, and then once that switch to the back 5 came, they tightened things up at the back, and of course obviously they produced that goal afterwards in the 64th minute. So Phil Neville pushed the right buttons there, and he managed the game very well from that aspect, and I think he was very key in helping them produce this victory and these 3 points that take Inter Miami out of the bottom of the Eastern Conference, and they are now in 9th place. But
I'm just gonna say that I don't agree with that. I'm just gonna say that I don't agree with that.
Well, you didn't like it in the stadium. You didn't like it in the stadium.
No, that is a horrible decision. That is a horrible decision because you're playing at home, and then you go with a 5-man backline when basically at that time in the game, all 10 players except for Campana were almost inside the box. So, try to get some possession, try to be aggressive, get one more goal. It happens to work out. It happens to work out for them this time. But I don't think this is going to work long term. And then when the tables turn and they don't get the result, I'm going to hear you saying that I wish they were a little bit more aggressive, put another player in the middle of the field. But now that it worked, it seems like you like. I'm just saying.
It's not a one size fits all statement, Jose. It can look well in one game, not look good in another game. It's not a one-size-fits-all type of... it's not a blanket statement here. Look, I liked it because they were giving up chances. And they were bound to give up a goal based on what we were seeing from the run of play. And Phil Neville went to his bench quickly and made a tactical adjustment. Was it defensive-minded? Yes. We can not like that from a gusto standpoint, from a personal preference standpoint, but from what we saw in the field and the level of performance in terms of what Inter Miami did, they improved. They improved defensively. They stopped giving up those clear-cut chances with an extra man in the defense, and they got the game-winning goal. So, yes, it worked. It worked. We don't have to like it again from a personal preference standpoint. It might not be the way that we like to watch soccer, but
You're
worked.
playing at home, man. Come on.
It does,
playing
but
at
it
home.
also changing
But
your
you have to
tune
be so
because-
defensive playing at home.
Wait, hold
come
on. Steve, what are you saying? Steve, who's changing their tune?
No, well, you're changing your tune because we had that big argument after the cup game, saying how you didn't think it was a great win. It was a valuable win because
Steve,
they didn't play very well.
is Miami FC the same as Atlanta United?
No.
Okay.
No.
That's
Okay.
just like I told Jose, it's not a blanket statement. It's not one size fits all. Inter Miami is expected to play better than Miami FC. It's at a higher level, in a higher division.
True.
It's
Okay. No, I understand
Atlanta
that.
United is in MLS. Atlanta United has DP players. Atlanta United has more resources. And Atlanta United came into this game, yes, with some injuries, but in 4th place in the Eastern Conference. So I don't agree with you that I'm changing my tune. If it's a different game against a different opponent, different situation, Inter Miami was not expected to have the ball, or not expected to play better based on what we've seen so far to this point in the season. So I like Phil Neville's changes. I think they helped win the game. I think they were a big part of why Inter Miami won the game. They didn't give up another goal, and they got theirs from that 5-3-2 formation that they moved into. So that's just my opinion. But let's switch gears to Leonardo Campana, because he's red hot. He might be the hottest striker in MLS right now. He gets a game-winning assist and a fantastic golazo. Probably the best Inter Miami goal I've seen in almost a year. Probably. Maybe that Breck Shea goal that he scored against FC Cincinnati last year. But heck of a strike, heck of a finish. Jose, I'll go back to you. What did you think of his performance, especially since you've been the one saying Higuain will start again once he's healthy, which he didn't this weekend, and that Campana would not be able to keep up this level of performance?
No, I think it's a great performance. I don't know. I think, listen, what I'm saying when it comes to Higuain and Campana, it's not related to Campana's level of play. I mean, he's clearly in great form right now, and he needs to play. Absolutely. My problem, and I don't want to say this all over again because I've been saying this forever now, but my problem
Make
is
it clear for the people. Make it clear for the people.
Higuain, his personality would not allow for him to be a role player in this team for a long time. That's my point when it comes to Higuain, but it has nothing to do, and I don't want to take anything away from Campana. You know, he has been great, and he deserves to start. So I think his performance was great, and you know, he's not a player that I don't think you can rely on him for the rest of a regular season. No single player will take you to the playoffs. I mean, he can be a great asset to the team, but let's remember and just take it slowly. This is a guy that is not used to playing 30 matches every year. So at some point, he's going to need help. So what I'm trying to say here is value what he's providing right now, but just know that when, you know, it's going to be a season of ups and downs. He's right now playing at a high level. When he needs rest, when he stops scoring goals, just remember that he was good at some point and he might be able to get back at that level. See, because the problem is that when strikers stop scoring, then we start thinking, and I'm sure people are going to start thinking, okay, now we need somebody else. It's not the case. I think he's a good quality player, but he's going to need time to get, you know, up to 100%. Maybe he's not at 100% right now. I don't think so. I think he can be better than this. So I think for Sunday and for the last few games, I think it's good, but I still want to give him some time. And I don't think he can sustain this level for too long. So he's going to need help.
I feel like El Primo is seething over there. I don't know why. I just feel like he is. Steve, your thoughts?
No, I think what on Jose's nonsense or on no, I mean he's right in that, you know, Higuain's ego doesn't allow him to be a bit pop player. But what's he going to do? What's he going to do? What are the options? They're not going to be able to sell him. So he either, and this is potentially the last season of his career. What does he do? Does he man up? Does he get on with it and fight for his place and show behind the scenes he can do it, or does he not play?
But Steve,
you know,
you're thinking about Higuain's options. Think about Inter Miami's options.
They're doing okay without him, mate. They're doing okay without him, aren't they?
Okay, what if Campana is not available? Who's the 9? Who's playing as 9?
What if a meteor hits her?
What?
It's possible for Campana not to play, isn't it?
No, of course. Yeah, but listen, that of course it is 100%. But you know, they haven't got the numbers in for sure to replace him. But they have got a few options either way. You know, they can mix things up. It wouldn't be pretty. You know, they didn't really have another recognised. Well, I mean, Robbie Robinson potentially or something like that. They've got options, but as it stands, they have been doing pretty well without him. And I think that is, you know, a precursor to him exiting the club, you know, at the end of this season, 100%. But I don't think Phil Neville's not losing too much sleep. I think he'd be desperate to get him out and get someone else in. Even he said today, you know, they're playing with no DPs. They haven't got really any DPs, although they've got a de facto DP, I guess you could say, in Yedlin, and also maybe Campana. But it's a difficult situation.
You can't DP. See, this is what I'm talking about.
Hold on.
We have to stop.
Wait. Time out, guys. Time out. Hold on. Jose, I actually didn't want to jump into the Higuain subject yet, but we can't talk about Campana without talking about Higuain. It seems like every conversation, whether it's on the pod or in person or on WhatsApp, any conversation about Campana leads to a conversation about Higuain. So let's tackle it head on here. Look, what are Gonzalo Higuain's options if he's not the starter? He could pout. He could say he's not going to play. He could just get healthy and be a super sub and accept that role, which maybe will be a bit difficult. Maybe would be a challenge for him, which I think is one of your points. But I think that's what's going to have to happen. Yes, he will start here and there when Campana needs a rest, when Campana suffers a dip in form, when Campana is called up to Ecuador. If that happens, if any of those things happen, Gonzalo Higuain's going to have to play and start. But I think, based on what we're seeing right now, again, I go back to last week's pod, Campana is the starter. He's the number one choice at the number 9 position. And Higuain's just going to have to, Gonzalo Higuain's just going to have to accept that or raise the level of performance so high that Phil Neville has no choice but to drop Campana. And look, there's nothing wrong. Something I thought about last week when I was driving after we recorded the second podcast, and I was waiting for this pod to say it. There's nothing wrong with a player who's played at a very high level, who is at an advanced stage in his career, to become a super sub. To become a player that starts in spots, that comes off the bench when certain games call for it, when the team needs a goal, when they need a spark in the attack. There's nothing wrong with that. We have seen that over the course of the history of the game in different countries and at different moments. And players...
What's the problem with that? Personalities. Some players are okay with that, some others are not. That's the problem. I mean, it should be okay. I think Blaise Matuidi showed it last year, right? I mean, he came off the bench for quite a few games. Gonzalo Higuain personality is completely different than Blaise Matuidi. And I think
absolutely. But I think he will eventually, and I could be wrong here. Maybe we speak in a couple months and I'm off base and you were proven right. But I think Gonzalo Higuain at some point will be real with himself and say, I can't give this team what Leonardo Campana can give this team. Look, and I told this to Steve earlier today. There are retirement talks, right? When certain players retire, they say something along the lines of, and it happens in all different sports, they say something along the lines of, I want to leave the game before the game leaves me. Right? And that's why they retire somewhat early, or maybe before some people expect. That's something you hear from time to time. Not everyone says that, but from time to time you hear some iteration of that. Gonzalo Higuain is at a point, and he's talked about, the retirement being close. He's at a point where the game is starting to leave him. Physically, he doesn't have anywhere close to what he used to be. And what he used to be physically wasn't necessarily, attributes of a track star. So, or a super physical specimen. So, he might be at a point in his career where he has to accept that. And I think he'll be real enough with himself to say, yes, I would love to start. Every player wants to start. But Campana's playing well. The team's doing better. And I just need to be that spot starter when I'm called upon.
I just don't see it. I don't see that at all. I don't even... if we go back into...
So you still think he'll start? You still think Higuain will become a starter again once he's healthy? In some way, shape, or form.
At some point, he's going to start regularly again in this season. I don't know if it's going to happen over the weekend because I don't know what's the situation with the injury, if there's any injury at all. but I think he will start eventually again for this team regularly.
Okay.
I understand completely what you're saying, but I just don't see it because if you go back to his career, I mean, he never took that role except for maybe the early years in Real Madrid, probably. But we're talking about the Galacticos Real Madrid. So, but other than that, I mean, even in Argentina, when in the World Cup, he was a starter for that team. So it's really, really hard for me to imagine a scenario in which Higuain is okay with being a role player for this team. It's really, really hard. And I get your points, both of you guys. And I agree 100% that Campana should start. For me, it's hard to.
If this was in Europe, he'd be sold in the January transfer window, 100%, or he'd leave. I mean, it's not.
Yeah, but if you're playing at that level, I mean, if you're playing at that level, for a fact that he should be retired. I mean, he shouldn't be playing in any top league in the world, and he's not. So, but this is different. I think he believes that he can compete in MLS.
Absolutely,
and I would agree with him.
Absolutely,
and he can compete.
And he can. Yeah,
he can.
Look, he doesn't have to like.
Why would he think? Okay, I'm the second best player, the second best striker in this team. Why would he think that if we all agree that he can compete in this league? And we as outsiders, of course, he is a player. He believes that he can do. I'm sure if you ask him, he'll tell you that he can score 20 goals in this league. He'll tell you that because that's what he believes and that's what he should believe. If he's not in that mindset, then he should retire. So, but I think it comes down to personality, and that's the thing. And that's what I do hate a little bit the fact that, Campana gets brought into the conversation, but obviously, they're competing for one spot as of right now. Maybe formation change later on will open things up for them. But to me, it's a matter of personality, of Higuain. If you move ahead 2-3 months and you actually need Higuain for a big game and he's not there mentally and he doesn't want to contribute the same way, then you're in trouble if you're Inter Miami.
You have to look at it from the longer term picture, and I get what you're trying to say, but you have to go with the guy that's going to be starting, who you see as the starter. And right now, Campana's the starter. Look, Higuain doesn't have to like the fact that he might be becoming a super sub or a substitute, but he has to accept it. And you're saying you don't think he'll accept it. I'm with Steve on this one. I think he will come to accept it. I think just based on the way the team's doing, I think he will accept it. If the team continues to play well, which is an if. Or not play well, excuse me. If they continue to get results.
If he ends up accepting that, I'm going to give him a lot of credit because I'm not expecting that from him. I wish he would do that because I know he can be an asset to this team, playing every now and then. But for me, right now, it's just hard to see that happen. But if that ends up becoming a reality, I think, that's a good scenario for Inter Miami, as long as Campana, still plays at a high level, of course.
Okay, well, let's get back to Campana very, very quickly. Just want to get your thoughts on his goal. Was it the best goal that Inter Miami has scored this season? Yes or no, Jose?
Yeah, I would say yes. I mean, it's the way he controls the ball. It's a good cross as well, but hard to control. Back to the goal, turns around. Yeah, good goal, beautiful goal. Yeah, I would say so.
Steve.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, without a doubt, really lovely touch and a great finish as well. When you first watched it, it was unclear whether or not he sort of flicked it past or it came off the other Inter Miami player. But it definitely lovely little touch and finish and scored it just at a really crucial time as well.
Yeah, so I was under the impression he brought it down from the start, but I did hear from other people they thought that maybe Robbie Robinson got a touch to help set up the chance. But look, to take nothing away from Deandre Yedlin's great cross, because that goal doesn't happen without the cross, even though it's a little bit behind Campana. But Campana's ability to bring that ball down the way he does, pull off the half turn, and then hit that pinpoint finish across his body to the far post is a thing of dreams. That was heavenly. Again, best goal I've seen from Inter Miami in about a year. Incredible goal. It'll be in his highlight reel from here until the rest of his career because that was a spectacular finish. Heck of a half turn and a feathery touch to bring that ball down. So Good stuff from Leonardo Campana. Also gets the assist on a play in which he easily could have shot, but he did the unselfish thing. Laid it across for Bryce Duke, who gets his first professional goal, his first MLS goal, and his first Inter Miami goal, and that stands as the game winner. Before we switch gears, I also want to say that second goal comes as a result of Campana's ability to press a little bit, because he's pressing the Atlanta United center back, and that's where look, the center back makes a mistake. 100% he makes a mistake. But the center back, because he has Campana behind him, he forces himself into a decision that is a poor pass. Inter Miami gets the ball, they attack the other way, and they score the game-winning goal. So that type of those little details are things that someone like Phil Neville and his coaching staff will look at and say, man, Leonardo Campana gives us a whole lot. Stuff that Gonzalo Higuain just doesn't give you, because Gonzalo Higuain does not press. He does not harry defenders that consistently and in that way across the field and in different positions of the field. So Campana, heck of a performance. Once again, he's the hot hand right now. Inter Miami will continue to ride that until he cools off, and then maybe even then they'll continue to turn to him. Guys, from Gonzalo Higuain's standpoint, what'd you think of his return? Came off the bench late, suffered an injury, limped through the rest of the game. His status for this weekend against the New England Revolution is in doubt. He was in crutches from what I heard from sources on Monday, but I saw him today, Wednesday, at the practice, and he didn't have any crutches, but he was walking around the field a little gingerly. Did not train from what we saw from the portion that was available to media. So did not train with the team as of Wednesday. Phil Neville did not rule him out for the weekend, but said there's a slight chance that Higuain could play or could be in the matchday roster, depending on how the Argentine recovers over the next few days. What did you see from Higuain in his cameo, Steve?
He buzzed about a bit. He has a presence, doesn't he? So when he comes on the pitch, the opposition will look at it and think, they'll be on their guard. That is undoubted. It's just, the ego of the guy, just whether or not the management can manage that and sort him out. But he'll always contribute on the field. He's a quality player. That is not diminished. And I thought he looked okay for someone that hasn't had too many minutes. And he just gives them something a little bit different. I don't think neither him or Campana are relatively fast, but Higuain's probably better on the ball, stronger, holds the ball up well. We saw a few little glimpses of that when he came on.
I don't think he's stronger, but.
Not stronger, but he just holds the ball up maybe in a different way. Technically, he's probably better, isn't he? So
do you liked what you saw from him in the return?
He did okay. Yeah. I mean, didn't set the world alight, did he?
Inter Miami fans did not like his entrance into the game. At least some Inter Miami fans did not, because they booed him, and that is something we can confirm here, because a couple of people asked me, did that really happen? Is that actually a thing? Because on the broadcast, I believe the commentators on ESPN, Taylor Twellman, they were talking in the moment of the substitution. I don't even think the broadcast catches the substitution take place, so you don't really see that or hear that. But in the stadium, there were boos when he was getting ready to come on. Campana turned around, or Campana at least waved a finger saying, no, don't boo. La Familia, where a lot of the boos were coming from.
No, don't come on.
Well, no, La Familia kind of silenced their boos. Higuain came on the field, and then there were some more boos. I don't know where they came from, but there were some boos when Higuain came back onto the field after Campana had come off. So clearly he's definitely persona non grata right now, maybe public enemy number one with regards to the team because of his lack of production. I've told this to people I've spoken to. As soon as he scores his first goal, the fans will start to like him a little bit more. Doesn't mean they're going to fall in love with Gonzalo Higuain, but they'll like him a little bit more, and they will celebrate that goal. It's not like they're going to turn their back to the goal or to the field if Gonzalo Higuain scores. And Gonzalo Higuain knows that better than anybody's played at the highest levels. He knows that that's how sports and that's how football is. You have to continuously prove yourself, and when you don't, there tend to be some criticism and some negative opinions about your level of play. So, he didn't do a whole lot from what I saw. Kudos to him for trying to toughen it out and play through the injury that he picked up there. It's a quad injury. And there was one play before he got injured where he was defending in the Inter Miami penalty area. like the whole team was defending a corner kick, I believe, and Inter Miami gets out of it, and they quickly hit in transition, quick counterattack, and he runs from Inter Miami's 6-yard box to Atlanta United 6-yard box. Not the fastest runner, of course, not the fastest sprint, but he hustled. He busted his tail to try to get to the other area to score a goal. I saw a player during his 10 minutes or so that was really, really hungry to score. And I'm curious that when he does score again, how he celebrates. Because clearly he's being impacted. He knows the narrative. He knows the storyline. He knows that he's obviously not the fan favorite right now. So I'm curious if he just celebrates that normally or just passionately, or if there's something more to it. Because I could tell, I mean, at least my perception was that he really, really, really badly wanted to score. And he got frustrated when the ball didn't come his way on a couple of occasions on opportunities he thought he should have scored on, including that long run, that lung busting sprint, because he like crumbled to the ground on his knees and on his hands after the ball didn't get to him. So, Jose, do you agree with that? Did you see a player that really, really wanted to score?
Well, yeah, because I think it's a very uncomfortable situation for Higuain right now. Whether he's in the process of accepting a new role with this team or not, the situation right now is very clear. You know, it's Campana first and then everybody else. And it's not supposed to be that way, especially for Higuain. It should be Higuain comes first and then everybody else. So, yeah, I think he's going to try to prove a point on the field, and that's why we saw him running around a little bit more. Obviously, he was a little bit fresher than the rest of the players on the field, but I didn't see much from him. You know, I saw effort, but in terms of talking aspects of the game, I didn't see much from him. He was not as involved. I saw the desire, but other than that, not much. I don't think the game provided him with opportunities as well. I
was surprised he came on.
I
was surprised he came on. I was surprised he came on.
I noticed in the celebration of the second goal, there was a situation there where, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, but everybody that was warming up on the sideline, everybody went on and celebrated, except for Higuain.
Right,
he was just clapping,
he didn't join
standing.
The group. Right. He
didn't went in and just hug everybody like everybody else was doing. But maybe this shows a little bit the frustration, which is normal. And I guess at some point I'm kind of glad that I see that, because it means that he still cares. But I don't know. It's just, I think we didn't have enough to make an assessment on what he did in his performance. But I will highlight the desire of him getting back on the field and scoring that goal. And yes, I am looking forward to that moment because I want to see that celebration. I have to be honest. Second half, I was looking at him for a long time. Just following him around. And
all eyes on Higuain.
All eyes on Higuain, the way he reacted to things. So I have an idea of what he did, but on the field, it's hard to judge.
In pregame warm-ups, it must be noted, he didn't really warm up with a lot of the team for a large portion of it. Kind of just stood around. Almost looked, someone mentioned it to me, almost looked like a coach, the way he just kind of stood and observed. And I took a picture of it on my phone, but I never got a chance to tweet it out. Just got caught up in the game action, but he definitely looked like he was observing more as opposed to taking part in a lot of the warm-up drills. So we'll see how things progress with regards to him this weekend and going forward.
Franco, just to add something else to that, I think it's normal, human behavior. Think about it. If for some reason next podcast, I'm not invited and I'm not here, and you send me a message and tell me, okay, next podcast you're only going to have 1 minute to say whatever you think about the game.
It's funny.
And then I'm listening to the podcast. I'm listening to the podcast next week, and I'm gonna be thinking like, oh man, I wish I was there for the whole thing, not just for 1 minute.
But it's not like he's been uninvited to play for Inter Miami. He's just
I want to be in the podcast for the full episode, not only for 1 minute. So
sure.
Think about it from his standpoint. Just knowing that he's not going to start,
I mean, you still got to be
I don't
professional,
know.
though. You still have to be professional.
No,
So,
of course, he needs to be there. He needs to be there. He needs to be there for the team. But I mean, it's hard. It's hard for a player that's used to playing at the highest level. They're not used to coaches telling them, "No, you're not starting." And that's, I mean, it's a normal reaction. Normal reaction to me.
well, let's see how things progress going forward. With regards to Gonzalo Higuain, it's definitely a storyline that a lot of people are keeping track of. Now, let's switch gears to two more players that I think need a shout out, deserve a shout out because of their performances put forth this weekend. Jose touched on one of them, Deandre Yedlin. The other one was Nick Marsman, who came up with multiple saves to help Inter Miami stay ahead in this one. So very quickly, Jose, your thoughts? Who is better? I mean, I guess you think Yedlin was better, but your thoughts again then on Marsman.
No, yeah, I already mentioned about Yedlin. I think he played a really, really good game, and I like the leadership from him. And Marshman, I think I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. I think those are saves that he should make. So, yeah, I would go with Jetlin. I would mention Jetlin over Marsman. I think he just had a good performance, an okay performance. That's what I come to expect from a goalkeeper.
Primo.
Yeah, Yedlin I like. I've spoken to people that covered him in England, and they weren't sure. Always good going forward, but unsure about him defending. But I think certainly in MLS, he's proven his worth. As the defender as well as an attacker. But I think he's a good character, good personality. He's a good leader. Effectively, it's like I think Phil Neville said it earlier today. He's like a DP that's not a DP really. And he's also got a cool guy. Got some crazy tattoos. If anyone check out his tattoos, some stuff on his neck, and portrait of him on his arm. There's some wild stuff. But he's a really interesting guy actually as well. And we've spoken to him a few times. I've sat down with him, and he's a good guy.
Okay, I agree with both of you. I think Deandre Yedlin had a good game, and don't forget, by the way, his filthy Meg on Andrew Gutman there in the first half. If you haven't seen it or you missed it, because if you blinked your eye, you would have missed it. Go on Miami Total Football's Instagram page. Pulls off a filthy nutmeg. Incredible bit of skill there from the right back. But I think he's been quietly playing very well. Very quietly. Kind of under the radar. Not been in the spotlight a whole lot in terms of his level of play. But I think he's been very, very good. Look at the recent stretch of games. He got a game-winning assist on the goal in the victory in Seattle. And now he gets an assist on the goal that brought Inter Miami level against Atlanta United. So pretty good from the right back. And I think he provides another weapon, another dynamic that's not there, especially at left back with Christopher McVeigh, who doesn't get forward as well. I think he gives Inter Miami's attack a bit more unpredictability because now you have another player that can overlap, that can make those marauding runs forward. I think Phil Neville said today, Wednesday at practice, that he's forming a better partnership with Ariel Lassiter. They're understanding one another a bit more. And we saw glimpses of that in this game against Atlanta United. Nick Marsman, for me, put in a very good performance as well. The goal scorers get all the love, but I think Marsman was deserving of a shout as well. He made 6 saves, including a couple of, I won't say incredible ones, but pretty good ones that helped Inter Miami in a great way in this one. So solid performance.
But noted also, sorry, Franco, you asked him also about his distribution. He was a little bit harsh on himself, wasn't he? He didn't feel like he was maybe passing the ball as well as he could be.
Well, I mean, and that's something that I think Inter Miami needs to adjust in general. And I don't think it's just a Nick Marsman thing. I think I asked him. The question started from, is he playing longer and not going short with his distribution and his passes as much as we saw at points last year because it's by tactical instruction or because that's what he's seeing on the field? And he said it's a little bit of both, and he wants to be better in terms of his distribution. He wants to get back to being making more accurate passes. Now, I think part of the reason why we're not seeing Inter Miami build out as much is because the center backs that they have don't have the cleanest touch. They're not the softest footed players. So, I don't think Inter Miami is able to build out, or there's not enough confidence in them attempting to build out as there was maybe with Leandro Gonzalez Pires and Nicolas Figal. So Inter Miami opts to go a little bit longer, at least right now, in terms of their build out. It's something that they're still figuring out how to work on. They had Jean Mota play the 6 in this game, by the way, to help with that building out. And he did okay at times, although defensively I thought he left something to be desired. But anyway, let's quickly touch on one last thing from this game. And this could be a longer debate, but let's try to keep it short. Noah Allen had an incident there after coming on in which he definitely makes contact with Brooks Lennon. Brooks Lennon goes down. There were shouts for a penalty kick from Atlanta United's part. The play went to video review. It was deemed not a penalty. Steve, we talked about this earlier today. Do you think it was a penalty, yes or no?
Well, I personally think it was a penalty kick. I understand that some of the Miami coaching team also thought that it was a penalty. It's just one of those where you kind of got away with it, really. I mean, if that would have been in the middle of the park, it may not have been a foul. But, all the red flags were raised in terms of contact and being in the air, etc. So I think they got away with one there, yeah.
Okay, I did not think it was a penalty kick. There's definitely contact made. There's contact there. But I don't think it was enough for a penalty kick. Brooks Lennon clearly tries to sell it, and he tries to flop to help earn the call, which he doesn't get. So I thought it would have been a soft call. I definitely could have seen another referee calling it, though. Definitely could have seen that happen. So no penalty kick for me. Jose?
Yes, I am the tiebreaker, and yes, it is a penalty.
Wow.
I agree with El Primo. I would call that a penalty. Listen, I think I've heard opinions, and I was rewatching the Spanish broadcast and on ESPN Deportes, and they all agree that it was a penalty as well. So I think you are probably the first person that I hear saying that it's not a penalty.
It's not a penalty kick, brother. And this is funny because this is the second time in a matter of a few weeks that we've had a disagreement with regards to a potential penalty kick or not, or a penalty kick or not. Last time it was the Damian Lowe foul. You both agreed. You thought it was not a penalty kick. I thought that was absolutely a penalty kick. And on this one, you both say, yes, it is. And I say, no, it's not. I don't think there's enough contact there. I don't think there's enough.
Yes, made contact with him in the box.
Okay, so it's a contact sport. It's a contact sport. So what?
I know, man, but it was a penalty. In the box, you can't do that. It's a penalty all day long. It's amazing. And he even went to VAR. I mean, it was astonishing.
And they didn't give it to, and they didn't call it.
It's just absolutely astonishing. Yeah. He went to the video. He looked at it for a good few minutes and still didn't give it. Amazing, really. Too
soft. Brooks Lennon wouldn't have had to flop if it was that hard of a foul. If it was a foul that was deserving of a penalty.
In the Premier League, that would be given all day long.
I don't think so, and I would hope not. Man, I don't think so, and I would hope not, because he's flopping to sell it.
Champions League final, if that wasn't given, then it would be absolute uproar.
I mean, there would be uproar regardless because it's a controversial play, but there's not enough there. If there was enough there, he wouldn't need to flop. He wouldn't need to flop.
Time to move on.
So penalty kick arguments: 2 for Franco, 0 for Jose, 0 for Steve. All right, I like it. All right, before we wrap up this first segment, let's quickly touch on 2 last things. One is the U.S. Open Cup draw happened last week. Inter Miami on May 10th will play Tormenta FC. They avoided an MLS team. Very favorable draw for Inter Miami. Jose, what do you think of that draw? Inter Miami looking good for the next round, huh?
Yeah, well, they should. They should win that game, but I wouldn't be too optimistic. Open Cup it's a different tournament. You just have to play well for not even 90 minutes. Just need one bad decision from the referee, a corner kick, a free kick. One moment can change the game. So if Tormenta made it this far, it's for a reason. So I want to wait. I know, and I would expect Inter Miami to win the game, and they are favorites. But I think we still have to wait and see what Tormenta brings to the table. I haven't seen them play, so I'll be watching some of their games and see. I wouldn't expect them to play at a highest level, but maybe they have a player or two that can end up making a difference in one game. Remember, it's just one game.
They're having a great season, actually, on a good run. I think they've only lost. I'm just looking at their fixtures here. I think they've only lost once all season. So it should be interesting. What a great draw for them as well. Brilliant.
Inter Miami will love that draw. I imagine Phil Neville and his staff. They'll never say it publicly, but I could imagine them sitting there watching the draw and being very, very happy about landing that team. Because yes, it's a one-off. They'll be motivated. They're underdogs. But they'd rather play that level of opponent in the round of 32 rather than an MLS team. So We'll leave it there with regards to that topic. One final thing we have to touch on, and this is going to make this segment, I'm sure, a little bit longer, is the stadium update that is expected on, or the stadium vote that's expected, or not expected, on Thursday. It's been talked about quite a bit over the last 2 weeks. You know, I'm bored of the stadium conversation in general, but we have to touch on it because it is news pertinent to this week. Inter Miami's hopeful of a vote that finally gives them approval. They need 4 yeses out of 5. Will we even get a vote? Jose?
From what I'm hearing is that there will not be a vote. You know, there are things that still need to be worked on for that to happen. But, you know, that's not necessarily bad news. I mean, for fans, of course, maybe for Inter Miami, they're going to have to pay a little bit more. But I think, you know, the conversation about the stadium has been ongoing for too long that I'm just happy that right now we're not just talking about the stadium, but we're talking about games and players coming in and players being unhappy and Campana scoring goals. There's so many good things happening right now. I think we just have to wait and see what happens remember, that's politics. So, you know, that's going to be tough. Several situations that could happen. I think as of right now, we just going to have to wait it out and see what happens after it and how long it takes. If it ends up happening, how long would it take for Miami Freedom Park to actually become a reality?
Why would it not happen, though? Why might it not happen?
Well, because go ahead, Steve.
I was going to say there's a suggestion that they haven't satisfied everything in terms of costs and different things they're going to do. Has that been satisfied enough, and then they can move forward with the vote? That's how I kind of understand it.
There needs to be a new appraisal on the land.
Right.
That's where one of the biggest issues lies. And that's something Jorge Mas admitted earlier this week on an interview he did with NBC6, if I'm not mistaken. Because when they drew up these terms, this was a few years ago. Now, obviously, anyone in South Florida knows that the real estate market has skyrocketed. Things are much, much more costly now than they were a couple years ago even. So there is the need for a new appraisal. And again, Jorge Mas acknowledged that in an interview earlier this week. And that is one big point ahead of Thursday, which may lead to there being no vote. Because until those new terms are agreed upon, then the commissioners may not vote on it. But we'll see. Anything can happen on Thursday. There might be a vote. There might not be a vote. There could be a vote that ends with a yes. There could be a vote that ends with a no. We'll see how it all plays out. Inter Miami's remaining hopeful and looking to get that over the finish line. I don't know enough about politics to tell you whether it's going to happen or not, so I'll just leave it there. But, you know, anything can happen on Thursday. Anything can happen on Thursday. Let's leave it there. It's been a lengthy first segment. Let's take a quick break. We will come back and preview Inter Miami's game against the New England Revolution with David Goss. We will do that after this.
I feel as if now, with the results that we're getting, people will probably start to see a different Inter Miami. That's what I've wanted all along. One with clear identity. I still think there's loads of stuff that we can do better, keep the ball better, possess the game better. But we have the key qualities that make successful teams successful, and that's that indomitable spirit, indomitable togetherness, loving being together, and fight.
Okay, everybody, we're going to do something a little bit differently this week. Normally, we preview the upcoming game for Inter Miami with a media member in the local market of the opposing team. But since Inter Miami just played the New England Revolution a couple weeks ago, we're going to switch it up, and we're going to go national here. And who better to do that with than with my friend David Goss, who is also an MLS Today host and a soccer broadcaster in general in a bunch of different places. You've probably heard his name in some place over the years. And if you're new to MLS, well, you will very, very shortly. Goss, I call him Goss, is a very personal friend of mine. We go way back to the New York days, my time in New York. We played soccer together on a few teams. We won a title. We won a trophy together, brother. We won a trophy together with your flying headers from the back. How are you doing, David?
I'm doing great. I'm limping along right now. I haven't played in a couple weeks because I injured literally everything at the same time. So I appreciate you making me feel young and athletic again.
I can't even call you David. I'm just calling Goss, man. I
Yeah,
can't
that's
call
fine.
we normally just go by Goss. I don't know if in the professional world you have people call you David or Dave. I just call you Goss. I've always called you Goss, so it just felt weird calling you David. I almost said David Beckham for a second there. But anyway, Goss, thank you for coming on. Let's just jump right into it. New England Revolution, Inter Miami plays them once again, this time on the road. Last time was in Fort Lauderdale at Drive Pink Stadium. New England's in a bad way. It still is in a bad way. Last time we had Frank Delap on, we spoke about the balancing of the CONCACAF Champions League, and obviously that does impact teams at the start of MLS seasons when they're juggling those two competitions at once. But they're out of that competition now, and they're still struggling. What are your thoughts on the New England Revolution start to the 2022 season?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I think the Champions League part of it was legitimate, obviously from the Open, but I think one of the reasons we see Champions League be tough for teams is obviously you have the focus, you have the travel, but the other thing is you ramp players up really quickly to high level games early in the season, and sometimes players aren't physically there, and so the drawback has been injuries, and that's a large part of what's happening to the Revs. And so, for a player, for a club, you sort of have a process, which is preseason starts, let's say, January 20th. How do you get a player hitting their peak in November? And that's a long process. And so to try and do it to players in February and March is very dangerous. This is what happened to TFC. This is what happened to LAFC when they won and then went into Champions League deep and then weren't able to maintain it afterwards. And so we've seen the injuries to Henry Kessler, obviously the injury to Matt Turner. There's a ton of question marks around that and where it came from and what's happening there.
Right.
He's still out. You've had injuries to Andrew Farrell, which this is a guy who played almost every single minute for you last year, and now Gustavo Bo and Adam Buxa as well. So when you look at the quality on the roster, it did shift. They sold Tejan Buchanan last year, who was a game breaker, and they sold Matt Turner, although he wasn't technically leaving yet, but they haven't had him this season. All of goes into, I think, the struggles that the Revs have had. And when you look at Bruce Arena, you're looking at a guy who's won every single place he's gone in the league, pretty much in his whole career, and he is a empower the players coach. Get the talent on the field and they'll figure it out. And now you're looking at a team where the talent isn't on the field and there are a ton of question marks. And Bruce Arena, I don't know, is really the guy to tweak things as it goes along. So it does feel like the Revs are in a waiting game just to see can they get healthy and get right.
But they do have some talent, right? Let's just look at their lineup from this last weekend's 3-2 defeat to DC United. And by the way, they gave up 3 goals in the first half after scoring early on the road. They still had in that lineup Buxa, Hill, Leggett, Farrell. I mean, they have some decent pieces there, some decent MLS and some players with national team experience. They have Carlos Hill, the reigning MLS MVP. Shouldn't they be doing better than what they're doing right now, though?
Yeah, I would argue they also have the best fullback pairing, maybe in MLS. I love DeJuan Jones. I think he's unbelievable on the ball, getting forward, creating, and then Brandon Bai scored a banger to open it up against DC. So, yeah, I agree with you. There is talent. It should be better. I think that's where a lot of the frustration comes from. But when you look at what it was last year, and when you look at the game against DC, they are silly mistakes. I think the game played out the way they wanted it to, and their mental mistakes, their, lack of closing a player down or reading the next play, they should be better. And I think that's where some of the frustration lies. But at the same time, I feel like you can see the reasons for some of the losses. And one of the things for them last year was Turner was the top 2 goalkeeper in the league, right? He kept them in games on chances they gave up. So they've lost that while taking a step back defensively. But they had guys with game-breaking moments in Bo, Buchanan, Heel, and Buxa. You've now, with the injury to Bo, you've lost 50% of that. And reminder, Buxa's been out a ton this year as well, whether it's for red cards, going to play for Poland, or injuries. So they've lost that ability to be the worst team and still win, which was a big part of their ability to win last year.
Is that the biggest thing that you think? Obviously, I don't imagine you watch every single game of every single team in Major League Soccer, but from what you've seen of New England, is that the biggest issue? Is that what's the the origin of their 2022 problem so far, or are there other things as well as play? I know you touched on earlier the juggling of the CONCACAF Champions League.
I think to me that is the core of what's at its fault. Now, there is a part of New England's struggles that goes back to last year, which was whenever you're great, especially in MLS with salary cap restrictions and you can't build a Man City, there are always these underlying issues that just didn't hurt you that year, right? When you go back and you look at TFC in 2018 after they were dominant in 2017, or LAFC the same, it's like, oh yeah, they actually gave up a ton of chances the year before. The other teams just didn't finish, or they didn't create as many chances as you thought. They were just super efficient. And that's the case for the Revs. Like, they gave up a lot of big opportunities last year, and Turner was just unbelievable. And Kessler and Farrell were dialed in. And then at other times, there was a fair amount of games. The Philly Union had a couple games against New England, as did NYCFC, where they would say, we outplayed them, but Tejan or Gustavo Bo just killed us in one moment, and we lost. So I think the Revs were always going to take a step back this year. And I don't think that's a problem for them, because I think their goal is MLS Cup, and they don't really, I don't want to say care, but Bruce Arena, for him, it doesn't really matter what happens at times in May and April and June.
Sure.
His focus is sort of ramping up to the end. Right. I think they were always going to take that step back. I just think with CCL and with the losses they've had in injuries, it happened faster than expected. But now I actually think it gives them the opportunity to build back up as the season goes along.
Right, and they've already won a Supporter Shield, so they don't necessarily need to gun to win another one. They've crossed that off the checklist. Quickly, before we change gears to Inter Miami, just to hear your thoughts on them as a national media member, I want to ask you, in somewhat of a similar vein to the situation going on down here in South Florida, Jose Altidore is a member of the New England Revolution as of this season, and he's primarily coming off the bench. Came off the bench of the past weekend. Why do you think that is? Jose Altidore is obviously he's had a very good U.S. men's national team career. Whether you're listening to this and you love what Jose Altidore has done for the national team in his career, or you don't, you can say he's had a good career with the national team by and large. So why is Jose Altidore, in your opinion, not starting for this Revolution team, given his pedigree and his track record? I know there's some good attacking talent there, but Gustavo Bo's, like you said, is injured. So why isn't Jose Altidore, in your opinion, starting on this team?
So to be clear, I stand Josie. So if anyone's wondering where I stand on what you're saying, some people are for, some people are against, I'm all in pro Josie. I think he's an unbelievable player. I think he's a generational USMNT player. I think for Toronto, he's been one of the best players in MLS history. And he's been, I think, the spear of one of the best teams in MLS history. So just putting that out there for anyone who's curious.
He just wants you to know that he is a Jose Altidore aficionado through and through. All right, he made it clear.
Listen, come on. I know Josie's listening, so I want Josie to know that as well. I support you. I'm here for you.
I think Goss is wearing a Jose Altidore U.S. men's national team jersey as we speak right now. I think it's on right now.
I wouldn't be mad about it if I had one. I'll throw that out there. So I think with Josie, there's a few things, and it goes back to what I said on the last point, which was Bruce Arena's goal for the Revs is to be in the best place in October and November as he can be. Josie hasn't played week to week in 1.5 to 2 years. So to get him right, you can't just throw him in and have him be a guy you're leaning on. They could have used him in CCL earlier and more, and I don't think he's physically there yet. He's also a player who's dealt with injuries, who has struggled with a couple different issues. I think accelerating him too fast is a fear for the Revs. So I think even with Buxa or with Bo out and the issues they've had with Buxa, the focus is we have a plan for how to treat Josie, and we're not going to deviate from that. And I think that's a key to the way they're building over the course of the season. Now, we've seen him start in places, but the belief is that Adam Buxa will be sold this summer. Josie's already the replacement there. They're not bringing another player in. So their focus is to make sure that Josie is physically ready to start week to week from July 5th on through the end of the season, unless what he can do for them in April and May.
Okay, then to switch gears, got two more for you. And I'm calling you Goss. Never, ever, ever calling you David ever again. I felt like I was in Spanish it would be like I was scolding you, like, David, come over here, sir, right now. No, okay. Goss, switching gears to Inter Miami. you had me on MLS Today earlier this week, and you asked me what I thought has been the turning point. Now, Inter Miami's turning point, regardless of what anybody thinks about it, started with the last game against the New England Revolution, their most recent meeting. 3-2 victory for Inter Miami, a Leonardo Campana hat trick. Since then, the team's been on a run. Leonardo Campana has been on a good run of form. I flip the question now back to you. What has changed for Inter Miami from your seat, from your opinion, again, as a national media member?
And I can't just use all the answers you gave me and just say them back, right? I have to say my own stuff.
I mean, you can if you want.
No, I think, listen, I think we talked about it. I think the first thing for Inter Miami, what it feels like is just a culture of expectation and winning and confidence is something that's lacked in the club completely. And it feels like once they were able to get that first win with Campana scoring their goals, and then you get the result in Seattle, it started to come together. Now, I thought they played well against Houston. The week before, Houston was efficient with their chances. Miami was awful with their chances. So I think the building blocks were there. We talked a bit about Deandre Yedlin. I really do think I thought the idea behind playing the back five made sense. I always sort of believe if you don't have two elite center backs, put three out there. And if you have good wing backs, you sort of unleash them to be attacking creative players. But I think the issue was that Inter Miami legitimately doesn't have three dangerous center backs. And so now you've got McVie playing as that left back. He swings in, it unleashes Jetlin to be as dangerous as he wants to be and can sort of change the shape of opposition teams to what Inter Miami wants. So I think all of those moves have been good from a confidence point of view of the way the team's built. Now Campana, with the belief he has in his finishing, and then some of the structural changes, it feels like all of it's come together at the right time. And you can say, you know, it was a bad Seattle team focused on Champions League in that game, all those things. Those are games Inter Miami hasn't won in the past. And I would argue, as we sit here, 8-9 games into the season, and you look at Philadelphia, who can't complete a pass, first in the league. You look at Austin with a ton of question marks, second in the West. Like, anything that gets you points is a positive because it puts you in a playoff race. It doesn't matter what the performance or who the opponent was. I just think for teams right now, it's about stacking points to give yourself breathing room as the season rolls along.
Wow, I don't know if the South Florida listeners will agree with that, because obviously there's very South American influence, Latin American influence here, and the performance does tend to be a important factor for a lot of people. But I agree that by and large, the Inter Miami fans will be happy with the wins, even if the performances haven't been great.
Let me say this though, and I agree with you. And listen, if I was a fan, that's how I'd feel. But right now that this year is almost a lost year, right? So wouldn't you rather have some belief that the team's moving in the right direction towards next year than maybe the style is pretty, but it's, not successful and there's nothing to bring the next players into?
Absolutely. I think fans, generally speaking, would rather see wins, ugly wins, than beautiful losses, especially after the last 2 years. Which takes me to my final question for you, Gus. And if we talked about the positive run for Inter Miami, we can't ignore the past that has been mostly negative. From your seat, and we've seen each other. We've crossed paths in different moments at different events since I left New York in 2020 for one of the reasons to come cover Inter Miami in South Florida, my hometown, my home area. But obviously this team came in with a lot of expectations, a lot of hype, a lot of talk, and they have not met those for various reasons. And they've had issues off the field as well as on the field. What have you thought about Inter Miami's start overall to life in MLS?
It's tough. I am someone
bring the opinions because listen, this conversation reminds me of us after our games or just hanging out in New York and being at the bar, and I know you're an opinionated person, so you can come in 2-foot and slide tackle if you want.
So I think for starters, you only get one shot at a first impression, and in MLS's history, teams that haven't nailed that have struggled just forever. And a lot of that goes back to MLS 1.0, right? You and me, we know how beautiful Red Bull Arena is, how successful Jesse Marsh's teams were. No one cares in the market. And so because Metro Stars got it wrong and Giant Stadium was a bad place to see games and maybe the broadcasts weren't high quality, all those things put them behind the eight ball. Now, I do think Miami's a different market in terms of the passion around the game and the size of the market, as well as I think MLS is in a different place. But I just think there was a huge opportunity missed to hit the ground running and be a successful team. Clearly, the Moss brothers and David Beckham were sold, I don't know, a bag of fake goods from Paul McDonough. And I've met Paul McDonough. I've spoken to him. I spoke to him while they were building the team. I thought he was someone who knew what he was doing. From his time in Atlanta, it felt like he was a guy who understood what it took to win in MLS. And I think in the end, he may have actually been more excited about, being the first guy to sign X $1 million Argentine U20 player and then sell him. And I think there were things that the team was built around that weren't how do we win games and who is our identity, and more what can we be? What can our brand be? What can we be known for? And that all of that came together into a mistake. And it really has been, I have to admit, I do watch a ton of MLS. I watch most teams, most games. I'd say over the last year and a half, weekend.
You keep it. Don't you keep a Google Doc? Or you kept a Google Doc one year with other people at MLS to see who watched the most percentage of games, which is incredibly high, by the way.
To be clear, I did not start that. Ham started that. She tried to track me, and it was untenable because it's an untenable amount of games I watch. But I do try and watch most teams. But there are, if now there are 14 games a weekend, you sort of have to pick things to say, okay, what do I start with? And if to it, I'll get there. And the list was Inter Miami and San Jose the last 2 years, because the games they weren't relevant to me for their opponents to other games they played.
Right.
I didn't learn a lot about the Chicago Fire, the New England Revolution when they played those two teams, because the games were so different than the average MLS game. And so I sort of hadn't tuned in as much as I would, because it was a bad product and it just felt like it didn't matter and all those things. Now it's been more enjoyable, and, obviously it's more enjoyable to watch. And I will say I was down at the Generation Adidas Cup. It feels like the academy is on the right path. It feels like, from what I understand, they're tapping into the market the way they should without trying to overpower it. One of the big issues with MLS clubs is if you try and have 500 kids in your academy, you're stealing from the other clubs. There has to be a right way to work with it. And it feels like Inter Miami's done the right thing of, we'll take one good player from Kendall, but we'll also send back a player or two who maybe we don't think can cut it for us so they can remain competitive. And you're not stealing business from these teams where you're trying to run. FC Dallas makes millions of dollars off their youth academies. But that also means you're taking away business from youth academies in the area, which can be a political issue. I think Inter Miami's done all that right. So there are some blocks that they've gotten right, but they are behind the 8 ball. I mean, Chris Henderson said it how many times? This offseason was more hectic than Seattle's expansion year. Like, he made more moves than building a club out of nothing. That is such an absurd thing to hear. And as parity-driven as MLS is, I still think it's going to take a few years to get over the losses that they had of allocation money, losing a DP spot, all of that, to rebuild themselves.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you say that from a national perspective. Because sometimes, and look, I enjoyed when I was a little bit more national and I covered the league as a whole, but I've more enjoyed as of late, especially being at home, covering just one team more specifically and focusing on one team, because you can hone in on that team, right? When you're covering the league from a more national perspective, you're watching one game from this team, like you just said, you can't focus on every game of every team the entire season. You could try, like you and others have, but but you're gonna fall a little bit short. But look, you've said it last year, from your vantage point and from what your job entails, and Inter Miami games didn't matter. And that's the thing that people need to take into context, especially when they're listening to this show, because we have been very critical, including myself. I've been very critical of Inter Miami, but it's because when the team does that poorly, it becomes a second thought, not only locally for some people that maybe aren't the diehard Miami Total Football radio listeners, but also from a national perspective and how people are watching the league and how they're consuming the league. So that's why every result matters. And I will always, always, always stress that and look at it in that shape and form. Gus, go for it.
Let me just add, and so when I say sort of some of the losses, I think you have to look at in this league, in any salary cap sport. I think, to me, basketball is the big one because that's the one that I follow. It's like you can't really afford. You don't have extra resources, right? If if Pep Guardiola makes a mistake with a fullback, he goes out and spends $60 million more the next offseason and gets a different fullback. That's not how MLS works. And so wasting the added allocation money that you got as an expansion team, wasting a high super draft pick that you got as an expansion team, wasting extra international roster spots, a DP spot, all of those things take what we're seeing with FC Cincinnati, take years to sort of rebuild as resources in your club, unless you can get fortunate or you can get lucky and, you hit on a super draft player like a Daryl DK who becomes a $10 million signing. Those are somewhat rare. And that's why every little thing matters right now for Inter Miami, because they can't afford to waste any of their resources.
Right. That's my saying. It's been my go-to saying. It all matters. It all matters. That is David Goss, ladies and gentlemen. Goss, before I let you go, I will give you a chance to plug the 1,000 different places you do work for. And I'm going to ask you, before you do that, to do something we do here on Miami Total Football Radio. It's called Miami Total Football Radio in English, but since we're in South Florida, it's also known as Miami Total Football Radio. So I'm going to ask you to say it in Spanish with the rolling of the R's as best as you can. We've had every guest do it. Goss, go for it and then you can plug in whatever you want.
Miami Total Football Radio.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Vamos.
That's not bad. Not bad at all. Not bad
It
at all.
could be worse, but it could be better at the same time. I'm working on that as it goes along.
I'm going to have listeners do a power rankings of all the guests that have done it and see what they say.
Listen, I just want to be mid-table. I just want to be in a playoff race. I don't need to be a champion. I'm satisfied with the DC United existence. So you can listen to me every single day on Twitter Spaces live at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. I host a show called MLS Today, or you can listen to it as a podcast if you search Spotify or any of your podcast apps. Just search MLS Today. We literally are on every single day talking about all the stories. We had, for example, Franco on to dive into Inter Miami. We will preview CCL. We'll talk the Nashville story this week. We had guests on to talk about Hernan Losada getting let go, Matias Almeida, the Giassi Zarya, stuff like that. I'm on Extra Time Radio with MLS on Mondays and Thursdays, and I host a show called A Football Pod with two co-hosts up in Toronto to bring a little bit more of a Canadian point of view. And it's been a pretty good year or two to be Canadian, so it's been fun to sort of coattail off them and pretend that I'm one of them.
Goss is a busy man, and he's also a very modest man because he could have plugged in a lot more than all that. Just look at his Twitter profile, at Empire Goss, Gass, and you'll see the number of different media outlets that he does work for. But Goss, thank you so much for the time and the talk. It was very, very informative, and I appreciate it big time because it reminds me of the days of living in New York and us hanging out, which we need to do very, very soon. I hope they send you back to South Florida in short order.
I hope so too, post-COVID, and now I get an opportunity to potentially cover a good team. So fingers crossed, Inter Miami, make it happen for me.
Well, we're looking forward to it when it does happen. That is David Goss, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back and close out the show. We'll do that after this. Okay, guys, Q&A time. Let's try to run through this very quickly because we've gone long on this week's show. Let's start with David Confessor. He says, why does Neville have Marsman punt the ball upfield so much? We lose the ball every time. Campana is a great target, but he hasn't seemed to have mastered the ability to use his body to win those long ball headers. Do you agree? Steve.
I mean, well, we touched on that earlier, didn't we? That he has been maybe forced into hitting it longer a bit more. I think... And you made the good point before as well that because the centre backs probably aren't as adept with their feet as they could be, maybe they are sort of not just knocking it long a bit. But I think once the game plan continues to sort of settle in and make people get confidence on the ball, then they'll do that. But I think if he's not confident in giving the ball to the back four, he's always gonna hit it long. All right, unless Jose has anything to add, we'll move on.
We can move on.
All right, next question comes from Dos Knows. Any details on the buy option for Campana? I've seen Wolves media posting about his success. Any possibility of him heading back? Jose.
Again, Franco. You knew. This is an overreaction. It's what, 4 games? No, let's wait it out a little bit. I mean, well, of course, it all depends on what the contract actually says. I mean, I've heard of contracts before in which if a player scores 10 goals, then you actually have to pick up the option, I'm sorry. So if that's the case with Campana, then we're just, 4 goals away, 5 goals away from actually, Inter Miami picking up that option. So it all depends on the contract, but I think we have to wait it out. Let's just wait it out a little bit more. It's a long season in MLS. Let's just wait it out.
Okay, I go back to Steve on this one. This one comes from Wario64, our friend Bernie. Neville has acknowledged that although our team has found culture, there is a long way to go as far as quality of possession and play. Can we expect Phil to try and change the current counterattacking mentality into a possession-based team? And if not, should he be in our future?
I mean, it's all about the players. And you even go to Football Manager. You try and fit the players into the system, or you create a system and then try and get the players to play like that. I think it's probably better to play to your strengths. And I don't think that Phil Neville can turn into Miami into Pep Guardiola's Barcelona anytime soon. So you've got to play in your strengths. I think that is being a little bit more direct, physical, and trying to hit on the counter, pressing, all that kind of stuff. I think that's the way they're going to go. They're never going to be a tiki-taka merchants, I wouldn't have thought.
Jose, anything you want to add there?
Nope, I agree 100%.
Okay, Daniel K. With the next one, this one goes for Jose. Now that Ulloa is back, will he or Duke be the go-to number 8 substitute? Mota looks his best when he's between the opposition's defense and midfield in possession and looking for the perfect ball into the box. No one ever makes those runs into the 18 for him. Is this because of coaching?
I don't think I understood the question. Can you go at it again?
Who is the go-to number 8 substitute, Ulloa or Duke? And then there was a second question, I guess, on Mota, so I should have split that up. That's my fault.
Okay. Well, I think Ulloa brings experience, but I like what Duke brings to the table, and again, I'm thinking from an aggressive standpoint here. Like I don't think the substitution on over the weekend that brought Noah Allen in was something that I would do per se. So I'm gonna keep it on the same line, and I would go for an aggressive player, attacking minded player, or at least a player that can hold on to possession and be creative with it. So I'll go with Duke, but I know he's young, so. I think Victor will have a role. I don't think we all expected the preseason that Victor had. It was rough for him, although he did play some good games when he was on the field. He was good. But I think Victor is a role player for this team, so he'll be ready. He'll be ready when it's needed. But I like to see Duke get some more minutes, and I think that'll be better for Inter Miami in the long run as well.
And don't forget about Mo Adams. Mo Adams is also in the mix there for that number 8 spot. It just depends on what the game's calling for. I think while they're all competing, I guess, right, for that first spot off the bench, I think it depends on circumstance and what a game calls for. I think Duke has made a very good case for himself though, because he's gotten a goal. And he obviously helped set up the game-winning goal against the New England Revolution a few weeks ago with that cross that was spilled by Brad Knight, and then Leonardo Campana pushed it home. So I think Duke is definitely more of the attack-minded option, whereas Adams and Ulloa can be the more defensive type of option. So they're all definitely competing. I think I think Duke definitely has made a good case for himself. Jose, I will ask you the second one, and we will wrap up the Q&A session after that. Mota looks his best when he's between the opposition's defense and midfield in possession and looking for the perfect ball into the box. No one ever makes those runs into the 18 for him. Is it because of coaching?
I think a little bit of both. I think, I'm sure the coaching staff has given Mota confidence to move forward. But I think it's just his quality as a player, right? I do believe he's built for that. I am really happy to finally see him playing not on the wing like we saw him early on in the season. I think now he's has adjusted to the position and he knows his teammates better. So I think he's up to a good start. And what he's doing right now, I think this is the role that I envision him for the rest of the year.
Okay, well then that does it for the Q&A session. Let's give our final thoughts and we'll wrap up the show after that, starting with Primo.
Thank you. Gianmotta also has the whitest teeth I've ever seen. Whiter. Only Tiger Woods, when I interviewed him in 2013, I think, in Carnoustie at the Open. 2006, sorry. Tiger Woods' teeth were unbelievable. Gianmotta's teeth are also fantastic. The final thought, I think today, we've been getting some great access at the training ground, and we're speaking to Darren Powell today, the Inter Miami 2 coach. Just to people to just keep an eye on. He's from Nottingham. He's a Nottingham Forest fan. Played for their team, and just to show you the impact of promotion and relegation. His team, Nottingham Forest, 3 points off second place, so they could go up to the Premier League and get promoted. They play the second place team in one of their last games. It just, if only MLS could sort of tap into what they can do there in terms of promotion and relegation, I think that the whole system would be so much better. But anyway, Nottingham Forest in the Championship. Check it out if you can, because that's going to be a crazy couple of games to think about. Darren Powell watching it from behind his sofa, probably.
Jose, you're up.
My final thought is on a recent announcement from Inter Miami, and it's an announcement that I am really excited about. Ronaldinho and Roberto Carlos are coming to Fort Lauderdale. Yes, I don't care that they are retired. They are old. Anytime I get to see Ronaldinho live and he's with the ball, I'm happy about it. So I think it's June 18th. It's a celebrity.
18th, yep.
Yeah, celebrity match. Hopefully we get, former players and not like celebrities. So if that's the case, I think it should be a fun atmosphere. So I'm excited about that. A second final thought here. I might not be here next week. Formula One is coming to South Florida, and I will be there. So I'm excited about that as well.
My final thought is on something that happened this weekend that I wanted to share. I'm glad that Primo's around for it, because I went to my grandma's memorial on Saturday afternoon, and I saw a lot of family members, some distant ones, some close ones, and one of them gave me a hug and gave me the condolences. And then he said, "I'm a big fan of the show," which I had no idea that my cousin listened to the show. So we talked about it, and he told me, Steve, he's like, El Primo is in Spanish. El Primo is completely off base with regards to the conversation about the Miami FC game. Inter Miami played very poorly, and we went on to talking about that, and we had some good banter. He even said at one point, he's like, well, I jokingly said something first, and then he said, yeah, he's like, well, I am the real Primo, so get rid of that Primo, and then I'll come on the show. So, so Steve, your seat is being targeted, my friend. It's being targeted. No, but hey, look, it's great to hear that a lot of people are hearing the show, and obviously we hope you guys have liked what we've done this year with regards to some of the guests we've brought on, whether it's guests from other markets or players and members of Inter Miami, opposing coaches in the case of Anthony Pulis. We hope you've enjoyed it. We have more things in store and lined up for you in 2022. But that does it for this week's show. Thank you guys again so much for listening and tuning in. If you can, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, formerly known as iTunes. We will be back again next week to recap the game against the New England Revolution and preview all of what's to come for Inter Miami, as well as maybe the stadium vote that may or may not have happened. So for Steve Brenner, for Jose Armando, I am Franco Panizo. This is Miami Total Football Radio. We'll talk to you guys again very soon.